Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Home. As we enter into the autumn season, let's talk about ways to prepare our homes. Maybe the seasons are not so drastic where you live, but here in Canada we definitely have 4 distinct seasons and each one has its own challenges. I'm going to be talking about some things that I do around my home and yard. They're certainly just suggestions, not necessarily things you have to do, but I hope that it will still inspire you. These are in no particular order and certainly don't need to be done all in one day. I spread this out over a few days. I'm not going to be talking about the full list in this video because I do have a blog post where I share all my tips, so I will link that in the description of this video. The first thing I'll share in this video is to switch out your bed linens. I keep all of our out-of-season bed linens in this cedar chest in the basement. So I went down and pulled out all the flannel sheet sets and some heavier blankets that we use. I'm going to be washing all of these because they just smelled a little bit stale. So I'll be washing those and then bringing them up once they're clean and putting the warm weather bed sheets down here as well. Our basement is not very well lit down here, so it's kind of hard to see this clip. But I'm just putting all the cotton sheets and lightweight blankets in the cedar chest. I used to keep all of the sheets in the linen closet, but it just got to be a little bit crowded, having all of them there year round, and I wanted to optimize that space in the closet better. So now I keep just the seasonal sheets and I use the extra space for cleaning supplies, and the very top shelf in the closet, which is often kind of wasted, I use actually just for gift storage. It's nice and convenient, but it's also out of the way. After washing the flannel sheets, I'm just going to put those and the winter blankets in the closet here. The next tip I have to share is to clean your registers and floor vents and cold air returns, all that kind of stuff. This is pretty easy. You might be surprised how easy it is. Sometimes these register covers may be screwed to the floor, so if that's the case, make sure you are using the right tools to take them off. Otherwise, you can just pop them off easily like I did and use a vacuum or even just dust them to get all the fluff and pet hair if applicable. I use my vacuum with the long attachment to get right down into the registers. This works really well and it doesn't take too long at all. I did this with all the rooms in our house, but I'm only showing a couple just because that would be really repetitive and I don't think you necessarily need to see that. Now let's talk about switching out summer for fall and winter accessories. I've already done this with my clothing, but in our coat closet upstairs I keep our summer shoes and some work gloves and summer hats, all that kind of stuff. I keep most of it in this hanging shoe organizer, but I also have some in some baskets on the shelf in the closet. So what I'm going to do is just take out anything that is not suitable for fall and winter. So sandals, lightweight shoes, gardening gloves, that kind of stuff. I'll be putting all of that in a basket to transfer into the basement. And I keep all of our winter accessories like knit hats and gloves and that kind of thing in the basement, just out of the way. I used to keep everything in the closet, just tried to cram it all in some baskets and bins to put on the shelf on the top of the closet, but this was just really crowded and it was hard to get things down. So I decided to make some room in one of the closets in the basement mudroom. I'll be taking this yellow container full of summer things downstairs because it fits nicely downstairs and it just works out well for me that way. I keep things like knit hats and gloves in the shoe organizer that's hanging up. I also keep my nice pair of boots there just out of the way. But we have a lot of winter accessories and they're pretty bulky. They don't all fit in the little organizer. So I do keep those in some type of basket or container on the top shelf of the closet. I also keep my snow pants in there and any extra like detachable hoods for coats and that kind of thing. I think this works out well because the space on the top of the closet shelf is kind of either really crowded or it's just not utilized very well. So this fixes that problem and still allows things to be nice and easily accessible. Next tip I want to share is to start thinking about your cold weather meals. What kind of foods does your family like to eat in the cold? Whether if you have any holidays coming up, it might be a good idea to start considering what you're going to be making for that, as well as maybe planning some easy and budget-friendly meals so that if you do have expensive holiday meals coming up, you can kind of save and plan accordingly. I grew a pretty big cabbage this summer and I've been preserving it a few different ways. One of those is to dehydrate it and keep it in the pantry for soups and stews and whatever else I can come up with. I'm also going to be taking an inventory of the pantry, just seeing what I have, what meals I can make with the ingredients that I have. I think it's really important to try to use as much as we have before going out to buy new groceries because it's just more cost effective that way. If you're constantly buying groceries, you may end up with some things in your pantry or fridge that aren't getting used. They just get pushed further and further back, and then by the time you come across them, they are expired or no longer edible. So it's pretty easy to take a pantry inventory. If you have a good stocked pantry, you can go ahead and do that, and if you don't have pantry space or you're not really into food storage, that's fine too. But I still suggest coming up with some ways to figure out what meals you'd like to be preparing over the next few weeks, maybe even months. Of course, Pinterest and internet in general is a great resource because there's so many free recipe options available online, but old-fashioned cookbooks are great too. I don't have a huge pantry, but I think the space that we do have is sufficient for right now. Pretty much all of our food is kept down here except for baking or spices that I use almost daily. I keep our extra tea and coffee down here, as well as any seasonings and spices that don't fit in the spice cabinet upstairs. I've got a shelf for dried produce from my garden, as well as some jars of dried beans from a big bulk container that I fill. And I've got baskets for all of our baking supplies, snacks, pasta. Further down, I've got a shelf for my garden onions and squash and some sauerkraut I'm fermenting, as well as some root vegetables that are in long-term storage. But I think it's really helpful for everybody, even if you don't have a large pantry space, to still be thinking about some ingredients you can be buying over the next little while to kind of make a mini stockpile so that you can have some easy and tasty meals over the cold seasons. For us, this is a lot of soup and stews, maybe some casseroles thrown in there. So those ingredients are pretty easy to keep because most of them are dry goods. I like to just make up recipes. I don't necessarily follow any, but of course Pinterest or just the internet in general is a great resource for finding some recipes so that you can come up with some type of meal plan for the cold weather. I also do have some cookbooks, but I don't use those as often. I prefer just to kind of make up main dish recipes as I go along. No matter how you cook or what recipes you use, or even if you meal plan very often, I think it's still important to come up with a few staple recipes that you can make throughout the cold seasons. Those are all the tips I have to share in this video. As I said earlier, I've got a blog post going into more detail with some additional tips. Keep in mind that this is just my suggestion for things to do for the cold weather. You might live in a completely different climate and the fall season, maybe even the winter season, doesn't really exist for you, so these might not be applicable. But either way, I hope that you found this video enjoyable and informative. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you take a look around and maybe watch some of my other videos. And if you'd like, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, or just give this video a like. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.